Breaking news tonight. New signs of a last-minute push by Donald Trump's Justice Department to indict James Comey's former deputy at the FBI. That's the man who took over the entire Russia probe after Comey's surprise firing by Donald Trump. Now, this is a bombshell from the Washington Post. The reporting is the DOJ has already authorized prosecutors to indict this former top FBI official, Andrew McCabe. And it is over an apparent technicality regarding statements that he made to other DOJ officials, effectively investigative colleagues, as they were probing his contacts with the press. Now, this kind of indictment would mark the kind of politicized retaliation or criminalization of public service that critics have been warning about in the Trump era. As president, Donald Trump publicly attacked McCabe personally, identified him repeatedly, and also attacked his wife. He also demanded the DOJ fire McCabe before he ever received his government pension. Now, the president does not have the authority to personally remove certain FBI officials, so this was all seen as a public way to put the pressure on. Critics say maybe that pressure is working. McCabe, again, was Comey's deputy at the FBI. He became, as you may recall, acting FBI director after the firing of Comey, so he was in charge of the FBI's Russia probe. And that was before Bob Mueller was even appointed. Now, at this point, it is not clear if McCabe will actually be indicted by the Trump Justice Department. But new details tonight emerging about how McCabe's team was told, prosecutors recommended charges, and the top federal prosecutor in Washington, the U.S. attorney from the Justice Department, also on board, according to this Washington Post report. Now, McCabe's team has been appealing that plan today. They say they've learned that appeal was rejected. Another potential clue here that is new about whether these charges are coming, and it would be a bombshell story. Well, the grand jury that was dealing with this and investigating McCabe was suddenly recalled this week, and that's after a months-long hiatus. The Post reporting that panel was let go Thursday. Now, that timing piece, that could mean anything. It could mean they did already approve this indictment. That's not yet what the Washington Post is reporting. It could mean they met and didn't go forward on this indictment, or it could mean they did something else. As you may know from following the Mueller probe, these grand juries, they're pretty secret. But what we are seeing in this report is news about a potential indictment of the person who literally ran the Trump-Russia probe. If that's the talk of investigating the investigators, the Washington Post is reporting, that talk may be hitting now. I want to turn to former Watergate Special Prosecutor Nick Ackerman, who has been on this probe since the very beginning. Before we get to what you may think is wrong with this, and many people say there is something wrong, walk us through what it means to you to hear that the DOJ has, quote, authorized charges against McCabe, and we learn the grand jury met again.
Well, first of all, the optics on this are absolutely terrible. I mean, here you've got a situation where Trump, as president of the United States, has actually asked for this person to be indicted. So, I mean, that in itself, whether McCabe did anything wrong or he didn't do anything wrong, Trump has basically put this case in a position where it is super politicized. Not to mention the fact that they singled this guy out so he would not get his pension and fired him the day before he would have qualified for the pension. Now, whether or not what we're hearing about the grand jury makes any sense, to me, if they want an indictment, the grand jury is going to go along with the government. It is extremely unusual for a grand jury not to return an indictment if the government prosecutors recommend it.
Can you think of any example in U.S. history where a president's administration indicted the person who ran the FBI or an investigation touching on the president?
Never.
I mean,
never.
Nixon didn't even try this.
No. I mean, he was not that stupid.
So now we get to the real question for you then is, if the Washington Post reporting is right, and we credit them, this is their report tonight, and we don't know what's going to happen, but if it's going in that direction, is that wrong? Is that itself an abuse of power?
Well, it certainly reeks of that. I mean, the optics, like I say, are absolutely terrible. I mean, Jeff Rosen, who's the deputy attorney general, is the same person who turned down the appeal and was the one who arranged for Paul Manafort to get a cushy club fed to spend his time in jail as opposed to being in Rikers Island awaiting trial here in New York. I mean, he already has a track record of doing Trump's bidding and political bidding. So it does raise questions. We don't know the facts. We don't know exactly what it is they would charge McCabe with. But like I say, this doesn't have a good smell to it.
And the other piece is the public and now potentially legal attacks on people exercising their free speech rights to criticize the president, and how much of this pressure goes on. Because Mr. McCabe, whatever one thinks of him, he did come out and clearly say that what bothered him most about Donald Trump was the criticism and the attacks and the undermining of DOJ and FBI, something the president's been criticized for by many, not just these people caught up in the probe. He was on this program once. I talked to him about that. Let's take a look at that.
In my view, the worst thing that this president does is the same behavior and actions that he engages in almost every day. And it is this unrelenting assault on the FBI, men and women in law enforcement and intelligence professionals. I think that constant attack, that denigration, has a corrosive impact on those institutions.
He's totally correct. I mean, that is the problem. When you have a person as President of the United States who is constantly raising the issue and asking that his political enemies be prosecuted, that they be locked up, it undermines the entire integrity of our justice system. It makes people question whether the Department of Justice is acting fairly in the exercise of its duties. I mean, that is a terrible position to have our government in and to have our Department of Justice in. I don't think that has ever been exercised by any president on any Department of Justice. I mean, even at least when Nixon fired the Attorney General who wouldn't fire Cox and fired the Deputy Attorney General, I mean, things went along as normal. Nobody was investigated because they were an enemy, or investigated or threatened to be put into jail.
Right. And when you put it that starkly, it is quite concerning. It's based on the Washington Post saying the man who ran the Russia probe is up for potential charges. They already, according to the Post, want to do it out of one office, and now it's hanging in the balance. And that can chill and go into the minds of every other person in law enforcement in America every time they have a case, and there are many open, that deal with this president's, I will say, unusual governance, because they're thinking not only the pressure, not only losing the job or the pension, but going to jail, which everyone in law enforcement knows it's a deterrent for a reason. I'm going to fit in a break. Nick Ackerman, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.